Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today I want to tell you about some of the best movies that are currently free to watch right here on YouTube. So you've come to YouTube for movie recommendations, but you might not have known that there are a lot of free movies included with YouTube. In fact, they have about 100 movies that are constantly in rotation, and honestly, 90% of them are pretty awful, but this list includes 10 of the absolute best movies currently free to watch on YouTube. Now, these will be gone sometime in the near future and replaced with new ones, so be sure to click that subscribe button and click the little bell icon so you get notifications when I put videos like this out, so you get to watch them before the movies disappear from whatever platform they're on. Now, we're going to start all the way at the back of this list with one that is not going to be for people who are afraid of spiders. However, if you're not afraid of spiders, then this one's really not going to scare you. In fact, it can be fun and a little bit funny. That is Arachnophobia. Now, this is kind of a classic, I guess we'll call it a monster movie from the 90s. It does go a little bit over the top, but it works because it stars Jeff Daniels and a really cool performance from John Goodman as an exterminator. Yes, this movie does look dated. Yes, it was probably terrifying to watch for anybody with a fear of spiders, but for anybody else, it's just kind of a fun, wild movie that is definitely well worth watching while included on YouTube. Now, if you took all of the best cheesy 80s sci-fi movies, I'm talking movies like Chopping Mall, The Stuff, and Return of the Living Dead, and if you smelted them down to just sort of extract just the purest sort of 80s cheesy sci-fi gold, you would end up with a movie like Night of the Comet. Now, I say that weird intro because this movie's not for everybody, but if you love those sort of 80s cheesy sci-fi movies, Night of the Comet is the sort of crown jewel of that era. That doesn't mean it's a good movie, that just means it's really good for that genre. If you never saw this one, it's post-apocalyptic, it's got a cheesy monologue that does include a recording studio, shopping, girls, zombies, comets. It's everything that you love about that era sort of put into, not a great movie, but it's all put together so well that it just exemplifies that era really, really well. So if you love that, you are going to love this movie, especially if you've never seen it. And if you're not really into that stuff, this movie is so drenched in it that you're probably not gonna like it. So let's go ahead and move on. So now, a movie that sounds way cooler than it actually is, but still ends up being pretty alright, is Reign of Fire. So a post-apocalyptic movie starring Christian Bale, Matthew McConaughey, and Gerard Butler, all battling giant dragons. Sounds like one of the coolest things ever, but the movie, again, PG-13, plays it a little bit safe, ends up not being quite as cool as it sounds, but the concept is so interesting that it still ends up being a pretty cool movie. So with the right expectations, this can be a really enjoyable watch. Not only are all those guys pretty good in it, but Matthew McConaughey in particular really stands out. This was at kind of a weird transition phase in his career where he had just recently done a lot of romantic comedies, and then he comes into this jacked, shaved head, he's dirty the whole movie, he's got a giant cigar, he's really kind of a cartoon character in this movie, but I love it. It's really badass and really cool and a little over the top, but that's what makes this movie work, in my opinion. The dragons look great, there's some really interesting sequences, it just doesn't quite deliver the sort of 1-2 punch that you would expect given the synopsis, but still, a cool flick with some great effects and some good sequences. I wish it had been rated R, but what are you gonna do? I mean, if they make a movie about dragons, they're gonna make it PG-13. So I'm a big Martin Scorsese fan. I mean, his movies really helped me discover a lot of what I really love about cinema, and his just epic filmography only has one sequel in it, and that is The Color of Money, which stars Tom Cruise and Paul Newman and is a sequel to the 1961 movie The Hustler. Now, The Hustler is a fantastic movie. I highly recommend it. It still holds up today. Paul Newman plays a pool hustler. It's a really just fantastic story and fantastic movie. And then The Color of Money came out 3 decades later, stars Tom Cruise under sort of the tutelage of Paul Newman's character from The Hustler. And it's a very different type of movie. The structure of it and everything is very different. You're just dealing with the same character that Paul Newman plays. So that makes it interesting. And then, while it's far from my favorite Martin Scorsese movie, it's still a really cool flick about pool hustlers. And in true Tom Cruise fashion, he has to do everything himself on camera. He really is making a lot of the shots that you see in this movie. They're jumping around to different dive bars, hustling people, trying to kind of work their way up to a big tournament. Kind of basic, kind of by the book, but in the hands of Martin Scorsese, it's just expertly executed and really fun and entertaining. It is dated because it is from the 90s, but that's also kind of what's cool about it. Now, one of my favorite hidden gem movies to recommend here on YouTube is currently free here on YouTube. It's called Troll Hunter. Now, this is foreign language. It is going to have subtitles, but it is a very, very fun movie. And honestly, the subtitle nature of it almost sort of adds to it because this is filmed like a documentary, except you're dealing with a group of people who are going out and hunting down trolls. And no, even though some of these trolls do actually live under bridges, they're not little cute trolls. These are gigantic monsters. And there's this whole lore behind it, yet it's shot like a documentary, so it feels very real. Now, some of the visual effects are a little dated and don't quite look totally convincing, but the concept and the delivery is still so engaging and so fun. If you suspend your disbelief for the 90-minute runtime, this is just a really fun, different type of movie. It just doesn't feel like anything else. It's a very unique experience. And again, doesn't forget to be fun. It's very, very entertaining. So before moving on to my top 5 on this list, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Universal Yums. They make a fantastic pairing with this channel because it is a snack delivery service and they deliver some killer movie snacks because it's stuff you've probably never, I say probably, you've never had this stuff before. Follow the link in the description. You can sign up for one of 3 different box sizes at 3 different price points, and every month you'll get a new box delivered to your door loaded, and I mean loaded with snacks from a surprise country each month. I've been doing it for about a year now. I have no plans to stop. It is an event when the Universal Yums box comes to the door. I love to open it up, see what surprise country it's from, and then before actually eating any of the snacks, I'll often try to find a movie from that country to watch, and then me and my wife will just make a night of it. It is a date night here in the Van Dam household. We will open up the snacks, taste test them, talk about which ones we like, what we like about them. There's little fun facts and games that come included in your box. And I get the big box and it lasts almost all month. It lasts for a really long time. If you want to get one of the smaller boxes, it's perfect. It's the right amount for 2 people to eat for a date night. I love it. Cannot recommend it enough. Again, go to the link in the description, sign up, try a month or 2, see if it's for you. You're probably gonna get addicted to it like I have, because I feel like some of these lesser known snacks that you've never had pair really well with a lot of the hidden gem, lesser known movies I recommend on this channel that you've never seen. It's hard to do much better than that, especially if you're still apprehensive about getting out in the world. This makes for sort of a fun, worldly experience you can have right on your couch at home. So when you hear the term Hollywood royalty, a few names may come to mind, but I think Tom Hanks is probably one of them. And as good as Tom Hanks is as an actor, he makes a really good director too, and he's only done 2 movies. His first is pretty fantastic. It's called That Thing You Do. Now, this came out in the mid-90s, and it's a fictional story about a band that sort of rises and falls in the 60s. You're thinking, you know, obviously things like the Beatles, the Monkees, bands like that. That Thing You Do sort of shows how a small band just becomes an overnight success and essentially kind of becomes a one-hit wonder type of a thing, but it's very, very good. All the characters are really rich. The world is really colorful, and even though it doesn't feel quite realistic, like a real representation of that era, it's close and it's almost more enjoyable because it is more colorful and more sort of like a pleasant place to spend 90 minutes. Liv Tyler has a really great role in this as well. In fact, I think it's one of her better characters she's ever done. And Tom Hanks is in it as their manager. He has a really great role. All the different band members have their own personalities, and there's just a lot going on in a fairly short movie. It's really fleshed out and has a lot of life to it, and is ultimately, even though it does have ups and downs, is a fun, positive experience. So if you need a little bit of a mood boost, this could be a great way to go. Now, longtime subscribers know I'm a big John Carpenter fan and an even bigger Kurt Russell fan, and I think them as a duo, they've made some of my favorite movies. Movies like The Thing and Escape from New York, just love them. My least favorite one that they work together is still really fun. In fact, it's just impressive that it got made, and even more impressive that it actually works as a movie, and that's Big Trouble in Little China. Now, obviously, this stars Kurt Russell and is directed by John Carpenter, and it's just a weird, wacky, wild 80s movie. I almost hate to go into too many details because I imagine most of you have seen this, but if somehow Big Trouble in Little China has eluded you, and you like 80s stuff, or maybe you're one of my younger viewers and you've never seen it and you kind of want a taste of the 80s because there's that whole sort of retro thing coming back. Big Trouble in Little China is pure 80s magic. It could only have been made in the 80s. That's where it exists. It's almost a time capsule of a movie. And it's just really cool and really fun to watch. It does feel incredibly dated, but again, that's what's cool about this one. I'm also a big Nicolas Cage fan, but I'm well aware of the fact that his performance style exists on a spectrum, where there's really weird performances that are not for everybody, that people like me really love, but again, not for everybody. And then more accessible performances that I think reach a wide audience that a lot of people love. And one of his best movies that fall into that category is Matchstick Men, where he acts along another one of my favorite actors of all time, Sam Rockwell. Now, in this movie, they play con men, they're grifters, they've got a whole sort of host of schemes that they will unleash on people, and they both play really interesting characters. Nicolas Cage is, even though I do say this is one of his more direct roles, he has OCD, and so he is a little bit wacky in this movie still, but not as much as some of the movies that might put other people off, I guess. But in this movie, he takes a young girl under his wing, sort of against his will, and teaches her how to hustle and how to pull off cons, and it's really entertaining to watch. His character is great. While Sam Rockwell is nowhere near the lead and not on screen nearly as much, he's just got some great chemistry with Nicolas Cage. I wish I saw them together in more movies because this one does work so well. And it's directed by Ridley Scott. I mean, you know, he's more known for movies like Blade Runner and Alien and Gladiator, but as one of his sort of like smaller scale stories, this is just a really fantastic movie. It's really well directed, well acted, well written. Gem of a movie. If you've never seen it, I cannot recommend it enough. And then by far the oldest movie on this list from 1963 is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. This was nominated for multiple Oscars and still holds up as one of the funniest movies of all time because the type of humor in it is still accessible, still relevant today. It's not topical to the time or anything, and this movie was shot so beautifully. It's been restored. It's got this beautiful Technicolor look, this wide angle lens. It's a really fun sort of caper movie about a group of strangers that discover a car accident, and the man that is sort of dying on the ground in the aftermath of this accident alludes to a treasure. And then as he dies, all these strangers disband and it becomes a race to get to the treasure. It's also worth pointing out that this movie is 3.5 hours long. It's one of the longest comedy movies to have ever been made, and it is engaging from beginning to end. This one is more of an event. You don't want to just sort of put this one on passively because it is so long. But if you've never seen it and you're in need of a laugh, and let's face it, we all are right about now, this is a great way to go, especially if you're not really used to watching older movies. This one could potentially open up an entire new world for you. And then what is easily in the top 10 sort of alien contact movies of all time, up there with movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, is Contact, starring Jodie Foster, and oddly enough, Matthew McConaughey's in this one as well, along with a bunch of other great actors, like John Hurt has a great little role. This one, you don't really see aliens in it. It is more about sort of getting a signal. This one plays out a little more realistically. This is more possible as to what could happen if we were to make contact with some other life force. It could come across as a signal at first. Now, this one is a little slow and a little dry in the first act, but still, you got great performances from Jodie Foster and some of the other people that I mentioned, so it moves and it's engaging. But then as you start to realize what's in the signal, this movie really takes off and becomes incredibly interesting and ends up going in a really wild direction that is, because of Jodie Foster, I guess, and the direction, manages to stay really grounded despite how wild it gets. It's kind of a magic trick that this movie pulls off, and it's pretty incredible, and is again just another real epic movie that I recommend making a point to watch, making an event to watch this one if you've never seen it. I love it. It's been, I don't know that I've ever recommended it on this channel because I don't see it on streaming services often. It's free on YouTube right now. I hope you love these recommendations. Let me know if there's anything else on YouTube I should consider taking a look at in the comments below. Also, help me thank the Patreon supporters while you're down there in the comments. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there is a link in the description. There's also a link where you could become a channel member. Right here on YouTube, becoming a channel member is a great way to support the channel, while also getting access to exclusive videos. I put new ones out every week. My latest one is a full review of the Apple TV Plus service, including a full review of my favorite shows on Apple TV Plus at the moment, so there's some additional value hanging out for you over there, but I will keep making videos like this one as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for watching this YouTube list, and you will see me on the next one.